I just think Biden shouldn't go anywhere alone without training wheels, bumpers, a nanny. Biden, you're an idiot. And I say that with all due respect. You see, back when you were trying to be honest, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, or maybe even prior millennia when you were the caveman lawyer, you realized that things were important, that truth mattered. Here, truth doesn't matter because you want to be a globalist. You know why? Because that's who donates money to you. The people that want a globalist society. Check out the Brookings Institute. The people that want change for change's sake, not change for America's sake. That's why our president's being attacked the way he is. And that is why, as American citizens, we have to be defenders of the Constitution. We have to stand for our president. Biden's asking us to believe something that the American character is defined only by unlimited acceptance of diversity and opening our doors to everybody. I mean, based on Biden's philosophy, everyone should find out where he lives, go over there and have a beer. Even when he's not home, just go to his refrigerator because he's open. He wants to be diverse. And the whole reason they're doing that is because they don't believe America is great. And because of that, they foist this huge steaming pile of dog poo on us and tell us that we are immoral. They tell us we are cruel. They tell us that we aren't inclusive, and it's pure crap. And the reason they're doing it is because they're losing the African American community. And that bothers me. So I did some more research. And you know what I found? I found a little thing called the Moynihan Report. You can Google it. It's easy to find, and I'm sure someone's talked about it before, but I'm going to just point out the salient points in this because this is going to lead you to the big news that I have for you today. You see, on New Year's Eve in 1964, Assistant Secretary of Labor Daniel Patrick Moynihan assembled his staff in his office to announce that they were going to help him write a report on African American families. It was titled, and I'm reading from the report, The Negro Family. I'm going to substitute Negro for African American now since we're more enlightened. The case for national action, completed in March 1965, became one of the most controversial documents of the 20th century, best known as the Moynihan Report. Moynihan wrote the report on his own initiative, hoping to persuade White House officials that civil rights legislation alone would not produce racial equality. You see, in Moynihan's report, if you read it, and I did, and you look at it, he recognizes the fact that the family unit in the African American community was more important and more critical for their success than government intervention. And I'm just calling it like I see it. But that's not what everyone wanted to hear. In the report, I mean, you can summarize it, and they do in this one article. Moreover, the report's ambiguities and contradictions, as well as Moynihan's decision to discuss racial inequality primarily in terms of family structure, produced confusion over its aims. Many liberals understood the report to advocate new policies to alleviate race-based economic equalities. But actually, you know what they did? That report was felt like that there was inequality, but they argued that the only racial self-help could produce necessary changes in family structure. Supporting the family structure would benefit the African American community, and that racial self-help could produce the changes in family structure and lift up the African American community. He went on to say that government intervention and support would not do that. And I'm paraphrasing. It would help in some cases, but unless you had the key ingredient of the family, it wouldn't work. You can't make this up. You can't not pay attention to history and experience. It's not a controversial report. It's a report that just was controversial to the people the way they read it. When you look at this and you look at the families and you realize that there were great families in the African American community, yes, there were racial problems. Yes, there were racial divides, but they got better. The Monahan Report is a historical artifact best understood, and I'm reading from the beginning of this article, in the context of its time, yet it remains relevant today amidst current discussion of why racial inequality persists despite the passage of civil rights legislation. Even those who do not see the report's analysis as pertinent to the present can learn how it shaped contemporary discourse. This report showed, and I'm paraphrasing because we don't have enough time to go all the way through it, that about the family unit in African American families mattered. Fathers in the house, guidance, virtue principles, those mattered, and that's what lifted up families. You know, there was another report after the Monahan Report. Yeah, it's true. Monahan Report was done back in the 60s, 70s. But in 2015, President Barack Obama and his administration, they convened a commission, a group of 8 leaders in the African American community. How do I know this? Because I did some research and spoke with some people. I can't find it anywhere on the internet. But they did a report to look at the state of the African American community as it existed in 2015 or thereabouts. And what they found out, this commission found out, was that the African American community was doing much better than the Obama administration thought. They were doing better economically, they were doing better educationally, they were doing better from a family standpoint. The communities were growing, expanding, doing well. It doesn't mean there wasn't poverty in places or inner city and violence, but the overall state of the African American community, based on this 2015 report, was good. There was only one problem. That's not what they wanted to hear. So the people that commissioned this report came back to this group of 8, and they said, you're not going to release this. Because if you release it, what was told to me, and I guess this would be considered almost firsthand, what was told to me was that if they released it, then that would limit funding for several of their political poverty initiatives. And politically and financially for the administration, it wasn't viable. My words, not theirs. But they did want to limit it. I just said viable because I'm trying to say this the best way I can to keep people out of trouble. You see, the American community, the African American community, is doing better, or was in 2015. You see, someone did tap into that in 2016. That was President Trump. President Trump tapped into that vibe. The African American community is doing better. They are rising up, not from government, but from their own internal initiatives, starting with the family, starting with entrepreneurialism. This report showed there are more black entrepreneurs. There are more African-American entrepreneurs. They are lifting themselves up. Oh, we can't show that. Then we can't get money for our political programs. We can't create victims. And they wanted to quash, and they did quash this report. Now, maybe a serious journalist can get to the bottom of it. There were 8 people on there. I know at least 4 of them. And that matters. The Monahan report, they didn't like what it had to say, but that was already gotten out. But in Obama's administration, as we're seeing going forward, the truth is merely to be used if it benefits the person that knows what's happening, instead of the truth being used to lift up an entire generation to propel them into the next century, successful and on an equal playing field. You see, true equality doesn't come from government. True equality comes from God. He gave us all inalienable rights. And the African American community here, based on the guys I talked to in this report, recognize that. You know, there's a myth. One of these guys told me, he goes, please write this down. He goes, there's a myth that there are more people, more African Americans in jail and prison than there are in college. He goes, that is pure crap. And then he showed me the study. No, the African American community, the nation, and I've talked about heroes, African American heroes from our founding. The African American community is doing well. And I think it's doing a lot better than anyone recognizes. And because of that, we need to open those borders. We need to get folks across. We need to can that census. We need to get more folks of color, just not African American color according to the liberals, on the voter rolls, or we're not going to keep and maintain power. It's time to open this can of worms and pour it out. Thanks for spending some time with Knives and I today. This is Dr. Keith Rose and Knives. Let's keep freedom rolling.